Okay. So one other thing about dependent or mutual dependence or relational dependence is it's talked about in several ways. The relationship between whole and part, between cause and result, and long and short and so on. And so some of these things are also in a relationship of causal dependence, like cause and result, but then other ones, like long and short, aren't also causally dependent. They're just relationally dependent. So, there's some overlap between these different ways of dependence. Don't think of them as, inherently existing categories. Okay. Another way that they often talk about the mutual dependence is in terms of agent, action, and object. And you've probably heard this often because they recommend that, at the end of a session, at the end of our day, that we dedicate our merit, seeing the agent, the action, and the object as all dependent on each other and thus empty of inherent existence. Remember that? Yeah? And so here, what you're getting at is, the person who did the virtuous action is the agent. Okay, the action that they did, an action of generosity, an action of meditation, whatever it is the action. And then the object is whoever they did the action in relationship to, or whatever object they were dealing with, okay? And so to see these three things as interrelated and not existing on their own. Because very often we have the feeling like in an action of generosity, okay, there's the agent, there's this person over here, all by themselves, an inherently existent giver. And then there's this action of giving over here, and there's this object, the offering that's being given, and there's the recipient over here. And they're all very distinct and inherently existent, and they just kind of clunk into each other, and that's, that creates merit. Okay, when it's not actually like that. That person doesn't become a giver unless there's a recipient and an object and an action. And there's no action unless there's an object and a recipient and an agent. And there's no recipient unless there's the object and the action and the agent. So all these things come about in dependence upon each other. None of them exist there on their own. Okay? And so here you can see why when bodhisattvas hear somebody saying, when somebody's begging and saying, I want, or I need, why bodhisattvas get so happy, okay? Because they realize that to create an action of generosity, they need somebody to give to. And without that person to give to, their whole practice of generosity is stifled. Okay? And so then the bodhisattva sees the kindness of the recipient for offering them the opportunity to create merit by being generous. Okay? And so the bodhisattva too, when they hear somebody saying, I can't stand your guts, they're like so happy. Don't worry, I'm still working on this one too. They're so happy because they realize that, in order to become a Buddha, you have to practice patience. There's no way you're going to become a Buddha without practicing patience. And to practice patience, you need somebody who's disturbing your mind and who's interfering with your happiness and who's causing you misery. So when a bodhisattva has that person, then they say, oh, here's, okay, the dependent arising for me to practice fortitude. The circumstances are coming together. This is fantastic. And so they appreciate this person who's saying, I can't stand your guts. Yeah? So, but you see how it really is true, isn't it? You know, we need these people in our lives so that we have the opportunity to practice, because we can't do those practices unless there's the person in relationship to whom we do them. Okay? And so then, we see the action that we've done as dependent, you know, and thus as empty, all the different components empty. And then also the action of dedicating, you know, is an action of generosity, and that one similarly is dependent, and thus all the different parts are empty of true existence. And they say that, you know, seeing our virtue in this way and dedicating in this way is a very powerful practice, because this, you know, then our virtuous action isn't just the collection of merit, it also becomes part of the collection of wisdom. Okay? Mm-hmm.
Question. The agent-object action kind of way of thinking, it seems like that would describe what Shantideva was trying to say about this gap between the cognizer and the object cognized. Like the cognizer would be the agent,
Mm-hmm.
the object would be
The object.
and the action would be
The
cognized.
cognizing, yeah.
Because you know, it was hard for me to understand, but this seems to be the framework that.
Yeah. What context was he saying that in?
It's in the 9th chapter where he's talking about
Oh.
see those things as truly exist, and there's actually this gap.
Right.
I think there's this gap, like there's me with my mind cognizing, and it's
The object. And then he's talking about how contact, which is the coming together of the sense organ, the object, and the consciousness, how contact is dependently related. Okay? And so therefore, because contact is dependent, then feeling, which arises as a result of contact, is also dependent. Okay. Mm-hmm.
All the 4 tenet schools accept mutual dependence?
Do all 4 accept? That's more the Prasangika view, because the Vaibhasikas, the Sautrantrikas, I'm not sure about the others, but at least the first 2, you know, actually probably maybe all of the lower schools, just see the cause, the result is dependent on the cause, in causal dependence. But they don't see that cause and result having those identities is mutually dependent. They just see it as going one way.